In parenting, how to coach children on how to make good friendships. It's a tough moment for any parent if a child comes home from school or kindy and says, "No one will play with me." So what are the ways grown-ups can help children learn the basic skills of friendship? Spoiler alert, show them how it's done in your own relationships. Parenting coach and educator Nathan Wallace is with us. Kia ora, Nathan.
Kia ora, Catherine. How are you?
Good. Can I please
I like
play?
what you said straight away then about the parents modelling it, because it is a huge part of it. And I think out loud saying what it is you like about your friends, rather than just saying, "Oh, she's wonderful," saying, "I like how she's always there, even when everyone else might not be talking to me. She still talks to me." Like when you outline exactly the characteristics that you like about them, that's easier for the kids to reproduce.
How interesting, because our first question is, what is friendship to a child? It's intuitive. But what do they perceive it as?
And it's often different things for different kids. I really noticed the difference between boys and girls. We know that gender is not a binary concept, but I did notice that the boys I raised, it was a lot longer before they had consistent friends. They seemed quite happy to play with a different person each day. Whereas the girls were more liable to talk about the same select group of kids all the time. So that tells me straight away, friendship's a different thing. For boys, it can be quite situational. Who was fun on that day? And for girls, it might be much more about, those ongoing relationships.
How interesting. I did see a couple of young girls walking along the street in town yesterday. They'd have been early primary school. Nat and Nat, they were the same height, and they could have been joined at the hip. They were so intensely engaged in conversation and laughing and so deeply involved. So
that's wonderful.
It can be everything from something that's very deep and personalised to something that is simply a friend group or behaving in a friendly manner for a day or whenever.
Mm-hmm.
So where do they first begin to understand the concept?
I think it just comes with being a human being. We are a relational species. We rely on other people. So, communication's about friendship. So I think just doing things alongside others when they're a toddler is starting friendship. We sort of think of the first 3 years as being mainly about that primary dyadic relationship, that one-on-one relationship. But those social skills are what the child takes to form their social skills with other children that we start to really see come online between 3 and 6. So much of early childhood is about social skills. It's not about literacy and numeracy. That's more about the 7-year-old brain. Early childhood is about friendships and relationships. It really is the key term, relationships.
I heard you say there alongside other people, and this is often where it begins. And you're teaching children to share in the first instance, aren't you? Like they're sitting next to each other and one wants to play with the other's toy. Which is a key element of friendship, sharing and involving. But it starts almost side by side.
Yeah, and it starts again with how the parent or the caregiver verbalizes that. If they're sitting side by side and one snatches the toy off the other, if we say don't snatch, that's not really adding to their friendship skills or their sharing skills. If we tell the child what to do instead of what not to do, that's much more effective. So instead of saying don't snatch, saying, mate, if you want the toy from your friend, you have to say to your friend, "Can I please have a turn with that after you?" Seems really obvious, but the more you say those things out loud, the more liable the child is to reproduce that behaviour. If the child just grows up hearing don't snatch, then they're not really learning how to share. Whereas if describing out loud like I did, then the child picks up on that skill much, much faster. So describe the good behaviour out loud. That's what I'm saying, basically.
When you mentioned one-on-ones, and they can get very intense of those friendships, perhaps particularly with girls, interesting observation there, but not necessarily. They become very, very strong one-on-one friendships. And then there's group friendship, which can carry its own dynamics as well, again, particularly with girls. But this idea of how you welcome someone perhaps first into a group, and it may well be in play at kindy or preschool and then on to primary school, where you welcome someone in when they ask to join. Can you talk us through a little of how you can help your child be a good person to someone else and then a good friend? Be
that nice person that welcomes them in. Because, they can equally say, "No, we're playing," and go away. So I think it's about having that conversation with your child. It's all about saying it out loud. And I would start with talking about, has the child themselves ever been in that situation? Have you ever been, you think about when you first started school and when you were new and you saw people playing, how would it have felt if when you said to that group, "Can I play with you?" if they had said, "No, go away"? How do you think you would feel? And if they didn't have that experience, and hopefully they didn't, and saying, how did it feel? Do you remember how it felt when that person, when those girls let you, or that group of kids let you into the play and they welcomed you in and they handed you a toy? How did that feel? Because if they understand how it feels for themselves, that helps to build empathy for how it feels for other people. Because oftentimes they may not want the new person. They've got these tight social groups. They know their friends, and someone else coming in, it is a wee bit of an act of friendship and kindness to welcome that person in. So you want your children to be friendly in that way, because that's ultimately how they're going to make other friends, because they're known as friendly. They're known as being nice.
What you say and what you do strengthens your friendships or weakens them, right? So how do you help a child, again, with the skills of saying things that are appreciative, or of showing a little bit of generosity? I mean, it's a very instinctive behaviour, particularly as a young child. As you say, I want that toy, I'll take it off you. Or I don't like what I don't. How do you turn it around into a conversation that builds trust, that also makes you be the sort of person people want to be friends with?
Yeah, I think some of that is, as a parent, we're often the kid's chauffeur, and I think that is actually a big part of friendship. I've got to make my home available for the other kids to come and hang out, because when I can be in the background and see my children interacting with their friends, then it gives me much more to talk about when I go to talk to the child about friendships. I can talk about, when Billy asked for this and you responded in this way, that made me really proud, because that's what a good friend would do. So I think some of it is, especially when kids often aren't always in the same neighbourhood now. So that meant, as a parent, to facilitate my kids' friendships, I'd have to be prepared to drive and go and pick that kid up and then take them back home again, which was kind of annoying. But if I want my kids to have those ongoing friendships, sometimes you have to do that, because they don't always live in the same neighbourhood. And then, again, out loud, saying to the child exactly what it is you liked about the way they behaved, or talking about a situation where maybe you weren't so happy about what they saw, talking about what are other ways that you could have handled that situation. It's really just having a conversation with the child. You've got to have an ongoing dialect about what is a good friend and what does that look like.
That role modelling as well, we talked about your own relationships, the way you couch a correction to someone you care about, or to a spouse, models a way, and when it works and when it's effective, models things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that age-old adage that children do as you do, not as you say, is absolutely true. And they will pick up on how we respond to our other friends. Do we hang up the phone and then say something horrible? Because that's not modelling, good friendship. Do they hear us, like, maybe challenge our friends in another way that is respectful and sort of honours the friendship without getting angry, but still puts in place a nice, clear boundary? So... I mean, I might even more likely do those things quite deliberately in front of my children so that they can see how that plays out.
What an interesting observation. You hang up the phone and then you biatch about someone.
Yeah. Because we often do that without thinking about the implications that has for our kids and the type of friend that we're being. But they pick up on everything.
They do. Now, you have got that child who is just saying, no one will play with me, or you'll see it happening. How do you help them practically? I mean, as you said, you can... Well, we have that awful situation. Sometimes you invite kids and they don't come. How can you deliberately help coach a child who's clearly having a problem with making those connections?
Yeah, I think I'll talk to them about scanning the playground and seeing, are there other children playing by themselves? Because it might be much harder to interrupt a group of children that are already playing and saying, can I play, than it is to approach another child who's by themselves and asking them if they want to play. If the child's not confident enough about that, I might say, sometimes you've just got to get yourself engaged in something quite interesting, and other people see that it's interesting. So if there's no one's playing with you, have you tried just sitting down and you might start, something in the water tub or something in the sandpit. Just start some activity that another child might be interested in. And then when another child approaches you, then be really responsive to that child and invite them into the play. You've got to give them, I think, multiple strategies of what to do, because can I play with you is not always a strategy that's going to work. So if the kid's got like 2 or 3 strategies up their sleeve, sit and do something interesting to draw other people in, or find other isolated children in the playground and maybe approach them. I've talked to the kids about sometimes if a kid's shy, another shy child, it might just be about putting yourself in their vicinity and not immediately approaching them to play, but maybe sitting down close to them, beside them, and starting to play yourself. Smiling at what the other person is doing. Saying something positive is often a good way to engage in a friendship. I really like the sandcastle that you've built. and then carry on with what you're doing.
That's really, really great advice that often older adults, or, certainly teens can use as well. This idea that your body language can be inviting, or that smiling, smiling
absolutely.
and making contact. If someone looks away, they look away. Don't have a crisis over it. But actually,
there are can be so obvious to us, but it's not that obvious to children. So saying something like "smile" at them.
Yeah, and then that invites the connection, and it's not automatic that you have that going on. Some kids do. Some kids are just innately great at this. Others, it's really hard. And again, that may well depend on how things happen at home sometimes. The ability...
And it's about your temperament a lot too, isn't it? About like you say, some kids are just innately good at that. They bring that temperament of being very socially orientated. And it's all right if your child's not hugely socially orientated. Not everyone has to be that, cheerleader type friendly. Some kids are more isolated they'll have a few solid friends that they have all the way through. And other kids seem to be friends with everyone in the school. There's room for both types.
Some of them are introverts, some of them are extroverts, as they may well continue to be throughout life. In terms of the ability to listen or to hear different perspectives, again, this is something you either model well yourself or you don't, right? You either snap and say, oh, that's silly, or that's not, that's not right, or you need to learn, and this is a skill for everybody, let alone a young child, to actually receive someone's different opinion.
Yeah, I think paraphrasing is great for that, because we're so taught to sort of think about critical thinking. We associate critical thinking with higher intelligence, but what that means is we often are so formulating the counter-argument in our head means we're not really listening to what the other person's saying. We're certainly not making them feel that we're listening, because they can often see it in their eyes that we're forming our counter-argument before they've finished speaking. So paraphrasing is the opposite to that. Paraphrasing is repeating back to the person what you've understood. So, what I just heard then was yours telling me that, and repeat what you think they said. Because that not only gives the person a chance to clarify, but it makes the other person feel really heard. And if they feel really heard, they're more liable to stop and take the time to hear you. And when we talk about quality friendships, that's a hallmark of a quality friendship, is that connection often comes from feeling heard. So paraphrasing is a powerful tool that, again, the best advice is sometimes the simplest. Paraphrasing is not difficult. Just saying, so what I hear you're saying is that I made you really angry when I took the ball off you. It can seem obvious, but making the person feel heard, that's crucial.
Conflict, and when a friend pulls away, and all these kinds of difficult things that can happen. That's sort of next level, and perhaps that particularly comes into effect as children get to upper primary school and beyond, and they're into their peer groups. There's two different things. A conflict, like for whatever reason you're having a falling out, is understanding what that's about a first step. Can you coach in the ability to say, hey, what's going on with you? What's going on with us?
Yeah. Or to coach in the ability that sometimes people are just having a bad day and you don't need to talk it through. You just need to step back from it. That person's had an emotional reaction. They may just need some time. And instead of going back to them and saying, why did you say that to me? You might just go over to them and say, are you okay? I think sometimes people just react emotionally, and we don't always need to talk it through. So it's getting the child to understand the difference. And sometimes we do need to talk it through. You need to be able to have the skill of saying to that person, was there something I did that upset you? Saying to that person, how would you have liked me to reacted instead? Often just opens up a flow of communication and brings in that positive stuff about how we want to act rather than what not to do.
Sometimes something else is going on that's causing their reaction, and that gets to another whole conversation perhaps one day about how much that's any child's burden to carry. But for their own sake, just saying, what's happened here, what's gone wrong here. Friendships also come to an end for all of us. Some don't, some last lifelong, but many do. And the ability to cope with that, and the ability to not blame something else to be discussed. It often happens at transition points, right, when kids might go to a different school. Or as we said, some kid may have got themselves in with the cool kids and they don't want to hang out with you anymore. There's a bit of a grief attached to that, but again, it happens, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's important that it does happen in some ways, because we need to, like you say, most friendships aren't going to last forever. Even as adults, we'll have friends at work that you're going to get a different job, and you intend to stay in contact, but you don't. That friend sort of falls away. A lot of friendships are situational. So kids having, we call it relationship bullying, when the kids are like, they're all coming to my birthday party, but you're not. That's different from, situational bullying where I snatch the toy off you because I want to play with the toy. So, yeah, talking to the child about, and there's so many different ways of responding to that. When they shift away, I remember letting my daughter, I was very restrictive about how much online time they had, how much screen time they had. But she had a friend that had shifted away that she was particularly close to. So when she spoke to her on FaceTime, that didn't come out of her ratio for screen time that day. I allowed the extra because I wanted to continue that friendship and not make it feel like it was just cut off and gone. Having farewell parties for kids. I know kids often do that of their own accord. When they know someone's leaving, they have a farewell party. But sometimes friendships aren't like that. They're not leaving, like you say. They just don't want to be your friend anymore because they've moved into this other group. I think, again, it's just about having a conversation with the child and saying, well, everything has their season. The way nature works, spring's followed by summer, which is, followed by winter. This may just be a time when that person's moving on to have friendships with someone else. It doesn't mean they'll never come back. So you want to leave it in a place where maybe they do want to be friends with you again in a few weeks or a few months. So you don't want to get angry with them. Try and leave it as positive as possible. I'm a great fan of talking the kids through how would that conversation go. Practicing that before they get to school. Saying, okay, you're not really friends with Maggie anymore. You feel like Maggie doesn't want to be your friend anymore. You don't want to cut it off with Maggie. So what sort of thing do you think you could say to Maggie that would let her know you're still open to being her friend, but you're fine if she's busy playing with other people because you've got other friends to play with as well? And practicing that conversation at the dinner table the night before.
You talked about also the difference between boys and girls, and again, generalising because there's no sort of strict differentiations.
Yeah.
People have all got their different kind of ways of going about things. But you did talk in a general sense about how there can be differences. And we've talked a lot about verbalising. We've talked about helping what to say. But often it is, and if I can generalise, it may often be with boys in particular. It's more about what you do. I remember Dame Celia Lashley talking about boys just, they just grab each other around the neck or tackle each other or shove it. They just do stupid guff to show their affection. And it's another thing, isn't it? It's another way of communicating to be aware of. It's not all going to be, tell me exactly what you're thinking and what I've done wrong. It may be that there's a gesture or a behaviour that thaws a situation.
Yeah, and it can be very family bound, like the gap between siblings. Often, you see boys being physical with each other. I've known boys that their older brother's 5 years older than them. So the way they play fight is much rougher than the rest of their age group because they're used to play fighting with someone 5 years older. So then another, with their 10-year-old brother. So another 5-year-old says to them, let's play fight. And they pick them up and throw them like the 10-year-old brother does. And that's seen, that's seen as real aggression. But it's not really. It's just, so I think we have to take into context, if that child's an only child, they're maybe not used to being thrown around. If they're from a big family, they're more used to it. Because boys do tend to be more physical. But I think, before we go quick to label them or to think that it's aggression or it's bullying, it can just be actually group bonding. But understand, where is that child coming from? What's their intention behind that?
Thank you very much. Nathan Wallace, parenting coach and educator, specialist particularly in the neurodevelopment of children